Mysterious Magic Unified College Entrance Examination, a special examination room for Yangcheng No. 1 Middle School. Be honest. The police uniform invigilator reprimanded, the test will start in 5 minutes, don't play tricks. Lynch was dizzy and awake, trying to hold his head that roared like a hammer, but his wrists were restrained by alloy steel handcuffs, and the crash sound was clear. After a long time, the blinking eyelids opened steadily, and the pupils shrank slightly, staring at the reality in front of them. Looking sideways, a strange and handsome face was reflected in the window, but his face was pale due to lack of sunlight. Lowered his head, the yellow vest with the word prisoner was being put on his body, and his ankles were locked with the standard shackles for serious prisoners. Lynch looked around cautiously, constantly capturing key information on the scene. Crossing? Prisoner? Magic? Examination room? Don't look at it, this is the single examination room that serves you. Take the test well, and the results will come out at night. If you don't get accepted, you will definitely hit the target tomorrow morning. The police uniform invigilator beside him said. Shot? Lynch's chest was suffocated with blood. Very good, it seems that the original owner of the body left him a die start. Lynch wasn't upset either, at least it wasn't Lin Pingzi or Yang Lianting who started the game. This is this. He regained his composure, pointing to the blackboard and asked. Lynch, who was born as a tester in a small town in the previous life, is just good at exams. The police uniform invigilator looked at Lynch, who was tall and thin, sitting upright, guessing the pretend garlic ingredient, and said for a long time, yes, this is the Mage intelligence test, your last chance to survive. In an instant, Lynch's cerebral cortex seemed to be filled with hot mercury, and the remaining memory fragments of his body surged up, like a slide projection, the dream was faint, and the curtain passed. He smiled bitterly on the surface and understood in his heart. This is a magical world that is slightly inferior in technology to the Earth, but is magnificent and mysterious. More importantly, the Mage has the supreme dominance. 0 ring, 1st ring, 2nd ring, and 9th ring spells can be called overwhelming, destroying the world. Bleeding wound, treatment injury healed in an instant. Incurable disease, remove disease instantly recovers. There are rumors of the transportation technique that spans thousands of miles, the dominance of mankind that manipulates others, the dissociation technique that annihilates all things, and the stop time spell that suspends time, all kinds of extraordinary powers. The qualification to learn magic and the chance to become a master is on the college entrance examination in these 2 days. Last night, Lynch's basic knowledge score has come out, with a perfect score of 500 points and only 250 points at the upper middle level. According to the total score of 650 points in previous years, it will receive the admission notice from the Magic Academy. Today's intelligence test exam with a full score of 500, he must have a score of 400 or more. The Arabian Nights. Putting on the college entrance examination in the previous life is equivalent to 1 less English test and 1 more line. No wonder the police uniform invigilator beside him looks like a dead person. Sounded like a death knell sounded. The formal invigilator who was in charge of distributing the test papers pushed the door in, walked straight to Lynch's test desk, handed out the test paper portfolio, asked him to sign on the seal to confirm that it was intact, and then unpacked it. The test time is 4 hours in total, and papers cannot be handed in advance, understand? 2 formal invigilators asked at the same time, and by the way, they looked at the police uniform invigilator to confirm that the situation was normal. Lynch nodded, and took the stack of test papers comparable in thickness to the 3-year college entrance examination and 5-year simulation. Is a matter of life and death, he is like receiving the mysterious code of XT, solemnly open it. Topic 1, define a chess rule as follows, the 5-piece line wins, please demonstrate the possibility that black will win first, and the balance measures. Gamaku. Lynch squeezed the pen heavily, revealing his veins, and his handcuffs could not suppress his surging thoughts. He finally understood the difficulty of the Mage intelligence test and at what level. There is no Gomaku in this world. Is equivalent to allowing the answerer to come into contact with a new type of chess in just half an hour, and then to study the game from beginning to end. No wonder the test papers are thick. With a sense of tension, Lynch immediately jumped to the second question. First, feel the overall difficulty gradient, and plan the time. Topic 2. Two accomplices are in prison and cannot communicate with each other. If the two do not disclose each other, the evidence is insufficient and the two will go to jail for 1 year. If one does the report and the other is silent, the whistleblower will be released, and the silent will go to jail for 10 years. If they disclose each other, the evidence is conclusive and the two will go to jail. 8 years. Please elaborate on specific options and theoretical models. Prisoner's dilemma. Lynch almost laughed out loud. From the perspective of a prisoner, there is a possibility of release and 8 years for exposing, and 1 and 10 years for silence. In the absence of mutual trust, the prisoners will inevitably fall into a situation of exposing and fall into the point of non-cooperation. This is the famous game theory of later generations. The protagonist of the movie Beautiful Mind, John Nash, in his 22-year-old doctoral dissertation Non-Cooperative Game, explained the problems in this area and proved the existence of equilibrium solutions, and thus jointly won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1994. Used in intelligence tests, is it too superb? Lynch shook his head and looked at the next question. Topic 3, A/+B/+C/4, please find a positive integer solution. Seeing this question, Lynch couldn't laugh anymore. The magic who needs this kind of problem-solving ability may not really be a good profession. This question looks like an elementary school question. If you replace ABC with apples, oranges, and watermelons, you might be able to take it as a kindergarten entrance exam. But actually this is a cubic Diophantine equation, and the smallest number in the answer is as many as 81 digits. Isn't this cheating? Lynch reluctantly released the oily pen in his hand and placed it on the table. The 3 questions are half buckets of water sloshing, but he has ideas but not enough to sort out the answers, even completely out of the way. He is really not memorable. The police uniform invigilator who glanced at the question was a little sympathetic. It is true that this question cannot be done by humans, and he has to withstand this kind of blow before he died. He made up his mind that he had to arrange for the other party to have a full meal tonight, and enough noodles and longevity noodles. After feeling hopeless through the passage, Lynch recalled the reasons for his death penalty and thought about the hope of breaking the game. In the impression, the original body owner stopped the atrocities committed by a certain descendant of the Mage, and as a result, the perpetrator suddenly died when he was furious. In essence, Lynch didn't even say manslaughter. He didn't even move his hand. But I can't help but the other party is a Mage apprentice. Based on the law on special protection of masters, Lynch, who was involved in the death of the master apprentice, was imprisoned for 3 days and was sentenced to death on the spot by the Master Arbitration Tribunal without appeal. The only chance of pardon was that he got the admission notice from the Magic Academy and eventually became a Mage apprentice. Only in this way, privilege disputes will become internal disputes, and civil liability will be imposed. All the thread are wrapped around this stack of hundreds of pages of test papers. Lynch looked more helpless. The sound of summer cicadas is almost silent at this moment, only the ticking of the clock on the blackboard and the swaying of leaves in the wind. In a moment of silence, Lynch suddenly burst into a volcanic eruption deep in his mind, and his whole person was in shock and consternation. The deep sea of consciousness, and an isolated island in the air, a brilliant and bright palace stands up from the ground. Inside the palace, numerous bookcase shelves are laid out and built up, neatly arranged like dominoes, overlooking a complex labyrinth from a high altitude. All the academic memories of previous lives are divided into categories one by one, organized into thick classics and placed on top of them. Memory Palace. Lynch was surprised. this is not the super memory ability that Conan Doyle compiled for Holmes? Open the books in the palace, you can accurately retrieve the memory of the past. Curiosity returns to curiosity. He manipulates the self-little man in his mind and walks to the chess bookshelf. Lynch's mental power was slightly concentrated, and in a short time a book of memories of Linkai's 1824-years-old Gomaku memory fell into his hands. Amidst a mixture of panic and surprise, the pages of the book open the three forbidden styles, such as the three forbidden hand, which have long been forgotten, are clear and picturesque, which is the first point of view to watch the post back then. The vision of his life is rolled into a long memory, and the years and swords are cut into countless frames and pages, exposed before him. Lin Qi faces like Yuanyu, picking up his old pen, and copying the memory in his head without any surprises. He first listed the ban moves of Gobang. They are balance measures and also mean winning strategies. The following 26 regular openings under the banned hand rule are also listed one by one. Among them, 19 types must be won in the first hit, 12 types must be won in the second hit. The outcome of the month, meteor, and long star games is uncertain, and the process is so urgent that there is no room for scrutiny. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. The enlightened Lynch did not stop to turn to the second question. The memory of the 27-page non-cooperative game Thesis, which was curiously scanned in the previous life, has been removed from the palace bookshelf. Theories, models, and proofs have gradually become clearer, and the Nash equilibrium until Pareto optimal becomes the front of the pen. When it comes to the third question, the answer at a chance glance lies in the classics of Lynch's mathematics puzzle memory. He copied it against the photo A15447680210874864419513911983748956643252664898253200352077999. B36875131781156522247482254748254929781962831374716372246340555579. C4373612677928672437993378423677720367877236. After finishing the long series of numbers, Lynch's expression suddenly shocked. The two keys to the entry of the Mage of the Nobles in the world: extraordinary memory and calculation power, corresponds to the two big exams of basic knowledge and intelligence test. Sitting on the golden elephant legs of the memory palace, isn't he full of memory? Well, there is no such thing as a fool. If he is smarter, he is really qualified to be among the highest ruling class of the Blue Star Fae. School of Magic, computer classroom in the marking department. A group of apprentice masters are like laborious worker bees. Is about the lifeblood of the mage class's grand plan for 100 years. All the examination papers of the mysterious Magic Unified College entrance examination are electronically scanned and handed over to the Magic Academy for unified correction. But there are too many blank rolls, and the overall workload is controllable. Hot eyes, if I were you, I would not dare to take the exam. The tall and thin young apprentice corrected 7 or 8 random answers and couldn't help but mock. Come on, you and I didn't always get through it like that back then. Make a good change, there will be results before 6 o'clock. The delicate young girl apprentice encouraged. Just the next second, her shining eyes solidified like syrup. Is this an early release? The girl's palms were sweating and trembling slightly, and the ergonomic mouse almost couldn't hold it firmly. What's the matter? The middle-aged mage who was in charge of coordinating control, came over after hearing the words, and scanned the densely written answer sheet on the curved screen. Is also surrounded by a group of curious and dedicated apprentices. The questions are all designed by the senior leaders of the association, and the difficulty level is beyond imagination. Even if you leak the questions to you, a group of people working overtime may not be able to touch the edge of the standard answer. The middle-aged mage was dressed in a pure white luxurious robe, his aura was condensed, and his stiff face disappeared within 2 seconds. 3 or 3 bands, isn't there a lot of answers? Although Wan Mian also answered 4 or 4 bands in long consecutive bands, he still can't balance the advantage of winning first. He is still an ordinary person who hasn't escaped the barriers. The girl rarely retorted, there's more. The scroll wheel drew across, 26 kinds of regular opening analysis were spread out in detail, and it was pointed out that 19 of them would still win in the ban condition. The apprentice in the rear couldn't help muttering, in addition to the forbidden hand rules, there are actually exchange rules, Yamaguchi rules, Sasof's opening rules. An average question is only 24 minutes, how did he come up with it? With the forbidden hand argument, you must win and lose the right way, but the layout is perfect, the balance method is detailed, and ingenious, you can give 4,045 points. The middle-aged mage nodded and closed the coffin. The girl was a little embarrassed, teacher, there's more. The silver screen is shining, and a new screen is ushered in. Zermeros the RM in a 2-player limited game, if both parties have complete information, and the game does not involve the element of luck, then one of the first or second players must have a winning or undefeated strategy. With mathematical induction, according to the following proof, there must be an undefeated strategy for black chess. Dimensionality reduction blow. This is already the strongest solution for most chess games, because they all satisfy the limited and non-luck elements. The middle-aged mage's face turned pale. The tall and thin apprentice said, teacher, in fact, this is just undefeated, not necessarily winning as the subject requires. But the girl didn't seem to notice, she scrolled to the next page. Proof 2, the backgammon first hand must win programming proof method based on searching for threat space. Under the title is a densely packed programming proof algorithm. The middle-aged mage finally lost his mind. He didn't even look at the specific proof, and shouted, call up the answer to the target's other questions. The girl nervously said, teacher, I don't have this permission. You open the interface, I will lose the magic and activate the authorization code. The middle-aged mage said with a serious expression. Immediately afterwards, the answers to the remaining questions of the mysterious candidates were shown in front of everyone. A paper again? Non-cooperative game equilibrium? In an infinite number of games, Nash equilibrium tends to Pareto optimal, from mutual betrayal to mutual loyalty. Let me go, this equation can actually be calculated in the examination room? That is 80 or 90 digits. The title gives the idea of natural selection and survival of the fittest. Can someone really derive a genetic algorithm? Simulate the local optimal solution under the evolutionary pressure of nature. These answers exceed the original standard answers, right? The sound of exclamation is endless, and the meaning of appreciation continues one after another. One after another, I came up with topics that I had studied for several years alone, but on this heavy answer sheet, the fonts are neat and clear, and there is not even a trace of alteration. The answerers are confident and clear from beginning to end. In the end, the expressions of these apprentices of the mage, who considered themselves the pride of heaven, turned from surprise to pale. In an instant, they witnessed the birth of a peerless genius. The kind of boss who can monopolize the training resources of the entire school has appeared. Ordinary people struggled to answer the questions on the first floor, their apprentices barely climbed to the second floor, the middle-aged mage settled on the third floor, and the examiner who gave the questions went deep into the fourth floor. The answerer is on the fifth floor, across the clouds, looking down on the world. Despite being blown into doubts about life, everyone is still intoxicated when they appreciate the answer. The graceful solution is like a feng fei in the world, guiding the thoughts to dance gracefully. Is just a curly length, and it has an end, as long as the number of fate. Blank. Where is the answer to question 9? Look at the answer to question 10. Hey? It's also blank. For a time, everyone, including the middle-aged mage, looked at each other and puzzled each other. I remember that the 9th and 10th questions are the kind of questions that can be used to fish in troubled waters. The girl apprentice frowned and analyzed, "Why don't you answer it the easiest way? Yes, a question is 50 points, 30 points are real, but it shouldn't be difficult to take a shortcut of 5 points and 10 points. A genius who has broken 8 consecutive questions, can't answer the last 2 comforting questions? Is a bit ridiculous." The eyes of the middle-aged mage gradually became deeper, and the incredible thoughts spontaneously emerged. Call up his score in another subject. The girl apprentice's face changed slightly, and she hurriedly switched to the database background to search. Then, her throat trembles like a bone in her throat, which is beyond words. 250 points. 250 points for basic, 400 points for intelligence, scores completely opposite to those of mortals. Interesting. The middle-aged mage shook his head on the spot and turned away with a wry smile. There is a group of apprentices left on the tree, some of them have not figured out the situation. What's wrong? Hey, what do you think of your admission score? 400 points for basic, 250 points for intelligence, and the sum is just 650 points, everyone is like this. The spell model cast by the mage requires a lot of memory, and the super magic skills use the body to memorize it with great effort to turn it into instinct. Basic knowledge test tests the level of memory. But diligence can make up for one's weaknesses, and relying on hard work to recite a level of 400 points, the Master Association also recognizes that this is the only way for most people to win points. This can't explain why he didn't answer the last 2 questions. Stupid, how did you get in? This great got 8 questions with 400 points. Now that the line is pressed, why write it again? For a while, the classroom was full of breathing and gasping sounds. Really confident that you can get a perfect score of 400 with just 8 questions? He would kneel below the rigid standard line of 650 points if 1 point is less, suffering for a lifetime. Is this the confidence of a real genius? At this time, the middle-aged mage had already walked to the gate. Looking back at the apprentices who were talking about it, he couldn't help but chuckle. Get ready to meet this new classmate, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com, you will see that the end point you are pursuing is just the starting point for these geniuses. I have to report this to the top. Lynch in the center of the storm hobbled out of the prison wagon, each handcuffed with a pair of steel heavy iron shackles. After this night, the fate of reincarnation is about to be revealed. I have to say that after his luck has overcome the 8th problem, it can be used up. What are the next 2 questions? Can't read it. So in the last 48 minutes, Lynch turned around and copied the paper Gomaku and threat space search that Victor Alice used to prove through programming in 1992 that he must win in Gomaku. Alas, it's better than nothing. I hope the scoring teacher will show some face. 3 points depend on destiny, 7 points depend on hard work, and 90 points are left, a strong teacher-student relationship. The guard on the side looked at Lynch's with the mark on the pen, and asked curiously. When I first left the examination room, I saw someone said that the answers to the 3rd question were 688, 1599, and 8600, and you seem to have filled it in wrong. Lynch couldn't help but glanced at the guard beside him. Brother, you can only communicate this question with me. He pursed his lips and smiled and explained, the answer is wrong. Why? I just pressed the calculator in the car, that's right. Your calculator does not have enough digits. What? Your result is 4.0000000001800191123. Yangcheng No. 1 Prison, Cell C015 for extremely large prisoners. The floor and walls made of high-strength alloy plates eliminate the spoon-digging tunnel escape method. The high-resolution infrared night vision probes set up at the four corners of the ceiling provide an extremely wide field of view without detecting dead spots, and it monitors the prisoner's every move in real time 24 hours a day. Lynch slowly chewed the maybe there is no tomorrow dinner. Black pepper steak, roast goose, pickled crab, and fried chicken wings are paired with Fat House Happy Water. The delicious meat is released in the mouth, but the mind is showing a happy movie. The ability of Memory Palace became more and more unfathomable as he used it. Suddenly, the sound of trio-like footsteps came. In front of the iron gate that separates freedom, stands a gentle middle-aged gentleman with an ivory cane. He is wearing a restrained black tuxedo evening dress with a red corsage on his chest and pure black shiny leather Oxford shoes under his feet. Under the shadow, the middle-aged gentleman bent his left arm slightly, holding on to the luxurious lady of the same class. She was wearing a high-order collar and shape-sleeved black dress, carrying a glamorous crocodile skin platinum bag, and her expression was indistinguishable under the black gauze. The guard who led the way stood behind them, bowing slightly. Lynch's first reaction was frowning. "I think you shouldn't know us as a husband and wife," the middle-aged gentleman said, with a mellow tone. Lynch shrugged. Tuxedo usually wears a more formal lapel collar or green fruit collar. The flat lapel collar is more common in entry-level suits, but you know how to insert corsages into the eyes of the lapels. Mistake. Oh? What does this mean? The middle-aged gentleman became more interested. In a rigorous place like a prison where both guards and prisoners wear uniforms, breaking the dress code can only express one meaning. You will override everything and break the rules. At the same time, the lady's black dress has been released from the shackles 100 years ago, and is no longer confined to the funeral attire. But the black gauze on the head returns to the theme, and it is no longer in harmony with your corsage, as if to show the meaning of red itself, blood and killing. Unfortunately, Lin Keke just finished reading The Godfather in his mind. As soon as the voice of fell, a fierce momentum rushed towards his face, the aura became invisible, and the whip went inside, making him hold his breath on the spot, as if he could only be matched with a military uniform. In the face of the final judgment, you can still keep calm and reason. I really believe that you can pass the wizard's intelligence test. The middle-aged gentleman reached out and held the steel fence of the cell. This alloy is as cold as a coffin. It's not very good. The prison budget has to be raised this year. The tone is cold, frosty, and windy. Oh! Lynch held the plastic dinner plate tightly. The tableware was made of special materials and was too soft to use. We are low-key parents. The lady of the black yarn interrupted, her tone harsh. First of all, I express my silence for his accidental death, and secondly, you should be clear that the cause of low-key death was a sudden death. Lin Chi knew that the visitor was unkind, and still explained. He looked back at the spherical camera in the four corners. The flashing red light on the mirror meant that he was working, analyzing the level of penetration of the entire prison. Then why don't you accompany him to death? The lady of the black yarn smiled coldly. From low-key sudden death to his sentence of death, the whole process took only 3 days. Even if there is the will of the Mage protection law behind it, it is too fast, and it takes at least half to a month in the impression. Now it seems that the supernatural powers of the couple in front of them are vast, from shortening the trial time to now breaking through the heavily sentenced prisoner meeting room to face him directly in front of the cell. The word budget has a profound meaning. Lynch is fighting for the last time. Even if it is the verdict of the common people, it should be determined by the starry sky above your head and the moral law of the world. That's right. The middle-aged gentleman agreed and nodded. This is why our couple is patiently waiting for you to be executed. As he said, he smiled and looked at Lynch, but your answer sheet is too full. Although the possibility is extremely low, after all, the word pass has already appeared. Alan is right. Before the early morning admission result and the possible amnesty order arrive, we should cut the grass and root, otherwise Zyoki will die unwillingly. In the dull summer air, killing intent instantly filled, and Lynch also officially felt a certain spiritual manifestation. A middle-aged gentleman in a high position may be constrained and restrained by his position, act conservatively within the rules, and patiently wait for the next opportunity to retaliate against him. But a mother who lost her beloved son cannot be judged rationally. Lynch can only ask knowingly, so your wife just sits and watches her husband lose her position and get into prison in order to spit out her chest. The black gauze lady was anxious and was about to argue, but the middle-aged gentleman touched her comfortingly. The Mage Arbitration Tribunal will forgive the grief of a mage couple for losing their beloved son. Moreover, killing a condemned person is really nothing to the mage. As for the ordinary position, it was originally accepted for the convenience of Guccier. Now it also lost its meaning. Mage couple. More terrible than a mage, it is two mages. Not to mention that in this magic-dominated world, the laws of the mortal world can hardly control this cloud class. But Lynch also pinched his lifeline, realizing that the other party wanted him to die in despair, so he kept talking. He wondered whether the frisbee hit the camera or let the smoke detector warn, which would provoke a first-degree response from the prison. The premise of pretending to be deaf and dumb is really not knowing. In this case, your power can know in advance whether I will be admitted, and it is not too late to kill after I have settled. You still don't understand, if you really get admitted, the middle-aged gentleman chuckled. As a result of my inquiry, I know that you are admitted, then you are a genuine apprentice of the mage. But I asked the result, before 12 o'clock, even if your name has been stamped on the admission notice at this moment, in front of me, you are still not an apprentice of the mage. These are the rigid and practical rules of the wizard world. Lynch continued to struggle, then can I ask how to die? His palms were soaked, shaking slightly, his tightly gripped plate was constantly adjusting its angle, aiming at the camera. The lady of black yarn interrupted, kneel down and pray that Cheer's soul has forgiven you. But you don't have to feel lonely. In the next few years, your family will come to accompany you one after another. Ah! Lynch suddenly became annoyed, knowing that he was provoked by the other party after all. These self-contained mages who ignore the law, such as the slave owners of feudal society, have long been transformed into cannibal demons. In the next second, the middle-aged mage raised his arm, the force of death gathered his palm, and the aura of destruction poured out. In a short time, Lynch's eyes pierced. Faced with this majestic pressure, he couldn't avoid it at all. Knowing his means of escape is nothing short of a trifling matter. Laureate. After shouting the mysterious syllable, the middle-aged gentleman said indifferently, "Cry in hell, the fear lord of the deep consciousness, I call you. Phantom killer." The light around him was suddenly distorted, and the void seemed to be a shadowy building, and then a ghost-like white-clothed giant sickle death walked out of it, and went straight past the prison gate without any hindrance. Seemingly virtual, it waved its giant sickle at Lynch, and countless souls wailed and struggled on it. The sword flashed down. Kill with no dead ends. Arcanus. Dispel the magic. The spell of all things, the power of mystery, the determination is exhausted. The rapid sound cuts through the quiet night sky, and the last one comes first. In a blink of an eye, after images flashed. Under the cuffs of the robe, a strong arm firmly clamped the middle-aged gentleman's wrist and prevented him from casting the spell. "Is it you?" The middle-aged gentleman was a little surprised. "Why did you appear here?" A young mage wearing a dark green satin robe, with a warm smile on his face, but his eyes are also fiercely guarded against the black gauze lady who has completed the casting posture. "Senior, everyone is a mage, why do you still ask such naive questions? Under the action of a high-loop teleportation scroll, the sky and the earth are naturally big, and it's only a few seconds away from me. And I am here to intercept. You should also understand the resolute will above. The warden, dressed in a white shirt representing senior police officers, hurried over from behind, panting. Immediately behind him was a riot force armed with real guns and ammunition, as well as 3 emergency doctors who were also trotting. "It's not too late," the middle-aged gentleman said indifferently, but when he turned around to see Lynch, who was still looking at ease, his voice stopped abruptly. The young mage walked towards the cell, looking at Lynch, who was dying. Meeting for the first time, Master Mo Feng. Senior high school freshman, Lynch. The young mage Mo Feng, who smiled and nodded, looked back at the middle-aged couple with a misplaced look and the prison who came from behind. "I now uphold the will of the Supreme Council of Masters, the Golden Dawn, and declare as follows: Lin Qi, a senior high school graduate of Yangcheng No. 1 Middle School, ID number 052723320010213999X, now passed the Master Association's Mystery Magic Unified College Entrance Examination and officially obtained the Master Apprentice identity. At the same time, because of his outstanding performance in the Mage's Intellectual Proficiency Test, it was included in this level training sequence, so the target and his family members are included in the scope of the association's protection." After that, he looked at the warden, who hurriedly rushed in front of him. "Mr. Warden, if you don't mind, can you lead me and Mr. Lin Qi, the apprentice master, to visit the prison's advanced construction work in recent years?" The warden looked at the middle-aged couple apologetically, and nodded humbly to Master Mo Feng. "It is a great honor, a great honor." In the next second, the cell door rises, and the corridor lights sink into the cell floor, blurring the interface. Lynch tidied up his collar and strode to the middle-aged couple. "Thank you for this precious lesson for me. I will have a good report in the future." As he spoke, he lowered his voice and said, "Just like I said to kill the whole family, you must kill the whole family." The young mage Mo Feng hurried to keep up with a smile, and walked away quickly with one hand on Lynch's shoulder. After walking to the corner, he wiped his forehead with cold sweat. "Big brother, I came in haste, but I didn't carry any super scrolls. You provoked the master of the city lord, so the other party was angry, and I was really not sure that I would be able to save it completely." "You?" Lynch shook his head in confusion. "I'm just forcing him to do it." Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com didn't expect him to endure it. It's completely different from the way he treated me just now. The young mage Mo Feng suddenly widened his eyes. "Aren't you the legendary master of death?" Lin Qi smiled bitterly. "It's half temptation and half decision. Only 1,000 days is a thief, how can there be 1,000 days to guard against thieves? I think an apprentice of this level training sequence, mage apprentice." Provocative words after he nearly died. "The Master Arbitration Committee should forgive it. In the way of the other, but also the body." Mo Feng's mouth whispered, "The premise is that you must survive. The value of the living level apprentice and the dead apprentice corpse is not the same. Hey, you have a nosebleed." Lynch wiped the back of his hand immediately. The smell of blood permeated. "It's okay to eat too much chicken wings." As for the rear, the middle-aged couple still stood there alone, motionless. The prison guard who brought them was shivering, lest he would be abandoned if he did not work well. He was so provocative just now. "You can definitely take action, as long as the person dies, the family will be able to suppress it," the lady of the black gauze said coldly. And the middle-aged gentleman was slightly lost. "Actually, that dispelling magic is already too late. That kid had eaten my 4 rings phantom killer spell from the front. Before I figure out the reason, I am not sure that I will kill him." The black gauze lady instantly dilated her pupils, looking in the direction where Lynch's back disappeared in the distance. She couldn't calm herself for a long time. And while Lynch was being treated by several emergency doctors, he was also looking at the memory palace on the isolated island of the Sea of Consciousness. A tiny crack emerged from the top and spread to the bottom, but at the same time the crack was repaired at an invisible speed. The abnormal change of the palace is the confidence that he has just gambled and tried, and even will never suffer from future troubles. With the admission notice from the Magic Academy, Lynch directly received the bail treatment. Strictly speaking, he was released on bail pending trial and left the prison directly under the leadership of the wizard Mo Feng. As for his next life in prison, according to Mo Feng's statement, there is no need to worry about it. The Mage Arbitration Tribunal will naturally issue the latest innocence trial without him having to appear in court in accordance with the regulations. It was mainly because the Arbitration Tribunal got off work at night, otherwise Mo Feng would get him a copy on the spot. Because of Lynch's meal, Mo Feng directly took him to the Xingken 100 building, a landmark building in Yangcheng, and went directly to the VIP elevator to enter the scheduled air rotation. Through the curved floor-to-ceiling glass with a super wide angle of view, Lin Qi looked at the night view of Yangcheng under the dark night sky. I have lived in Yangcheng for 18 years, and I passed by here no less than 100 times. I didn't know that there was such a quiet and elegant bar. Lynch said to the bar with scattered guests outside the box. Mo Feng smiled slightly. Masters like private places, so many association industries and even top clubs. Only the masters and their relatives or invitees are eligible to enter. As he said, he also looked back at the center of the stage swept by a circle of neon lights, but I think this should be my Mage. Even the entertainment venues have begun to close the loop, and Lynch faintly feels the sense of division between the Mage class and society. Don't frown, you will even take the initiative to maintain this decency in the future as a vested interest. Mo Feng smiled. This expression also appeared on his face for a while. Lynch curled his lips slightly, but he was the new era successor who grew up singing international, but he didn't eat this class of corruption. Mo Feng took a sip of the cocktail in the glass. I'm bringing you here, mainly because I want to find a place that is private enough for communication and communicate with you first. This year, your freshmen will enroll in advance and report in about a week. Lynch nodded. In fact, he was also looking forward to the next magic journey. After that, the management of the academy was strict, and it was difficult for the apprentices to return home during the winter and summer vacations, and they were almost isolated from the world. He also began to calm down, staring at the desert wind in the robe in front of him. The other party came all the way to inform the admission result and this level treatment in advance. It was definitely not just a slap in the face. Lynch was thinking about the memory palace in his mind at the same time. According to the rumors, the magicians have too many magical powers. It is impossible to guard against reading the superficial thinking and modifying the memory. Your level treatment is actually very special. But the activation method is more special. Talking about Mo Feng, he talked about everything that happened just now in the admissions committee. Lin's Hike realized that he almost became the meat of the chopping board. You don't need to be grateful to me. In fact, the moment the dean saw your file, you were sheltered because of this similar fate. The fifth category generally refers to special conditions that can be activated and have extraordinary power, so even if your future calculations do not match, you will not be subject to much trouble. Everyone has the patience to wait for you to create miracles. Saying Mo Feng raised his eyebrows slightly. However, little brother Lynch, since we have reached this point, why don't you tell me the truth? Are you pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger for the past few years, or are you really entering under the pressure of death? That kind of supercomputing state. At this time, in the Chardash dance played by the violinist, the tune has been slowly cut from the melodious to the high rhythm part. Lynch was a little bit ridiculous. Didn't the other party just think he was a genius under pressure just now at the meeting? It was just a few thoughts, but his back was numb, and his face was holding back his calm posture. The desert wind in front of him is covered with sparse stubble, and the facial lines are distinct. He is born with a melancholy temperament. In the bar, he is at the level of chaos. But, the other party didn't dare to be sure, so he just grabbed the historical case and said something. Under selfishness, there must be a plan. If you don't have the real material, wouldn't you become the opponents from now on? Although Lynch had the free death gold medal invisibly after the dean spoke, he still didn't relax in his heart. He looked as usual, I can't tell this myself, but the answer keeps pouring out of my mind. Listening to this Versailles answer, Mo Feng was a little embarrassed. He realized that he was too hurried and waved his hand quickly, don't worry, our mage has more factions than you can imagine. I also have the power behind me, so I need more accurate information, and if necessary, we will even disguise you. Mo Feng turned his head and looked at the individual visitors chatting on the bar. Many eyes gathered. It was due to his robe, and a woman with a hot figure smiled at him even more charmingly. He said aloud, believe it or not, among these people are the lows. I don't know if it is an illusion, but Lynch instantly noticed that a couple silently lowered their heads. Then Mo Feng turned around, but don't worry, we have an iron law established by convention, which is a place exclusively for the mage. You can't use any eavesdropping methods, just beware of your ears. Lynch then understood why it was chosen here, because the decibels of the melody are enough to cover up the conversation. Lin Chi, the entire Oniaker 3/4 of land in Yangcheng is controlled by their husband and wife. And I guess they will probably apply for transfer back to the capital in a few days, or even transfer to the college, so you don't have to sit back and relax. The moment I jumped out to protect you at the meeting, it represented our side's bet. The dean also saw this, or was happy to see it, so I was responsible for accepting you. Lynch interrupted, everyone has it. Will the dean ignore this? Mo Feng understood that Lynch had grasped the key points of the problem and nodded in satisfaction, only this level training sequence can get this treatment, and some Alavels also have it. The dean is everyone's backstage and will naturally protect you. But Mingqiang, it's easy to dodge a secret arrow and it's hard to guard against. Don't take it lightly. The family power behind Sang Lanlin goes straight to the council. The Supreme Council, the highest authority of the Mage Association, and every member of the council in it is the giant of the Blue Stars Senate. Lynch knew that this did not mean any deceit, and said loosely, but I really can't pinch my stressful state to the usual level. He knows very well that the stronger the performance, the more valuable and worthy of high protection. Not to mention, he still has a whole card for the Memory Palace, but he still doesn't know the value level, and he plans to talk about it after entering the academy. So it doesn't matter that he is misunderstood as a computing genius for the time being. On the one hand, he has the excuse of fifth type, stress inspiration, and on the other hand, he can also hand over another whole card to act as a memory genius. The key now is to get through this empty window first. Mage Mo Feng had a playful look and asked, then do you mind testing it? Lynch nodded, and after a big deal, there was no pressure to push away. Mo Feng was overjoyed when he heard the words, knowing that most of his task was completed, and he directly took out a cube from his pocket and placed it on the glass coffee table. Lynch's eyes condensed instantly. THRELE Rubik's Cube, 9 squares on each side, 6 sides and 6 colors. But this one has been twisted, the color is disturbed. This little toy, which has just been passed down from above in the past few days, has quickly become a popular gadget in the academy. The way to play is to restore it from a disordered state to the same color on each side. Lynch inhaled slightly, are there any requests? Mo Feng saw that the other party did the opposite, and his interest suddenly increased. Ordinary gameplay, just hold it in your hand and start spinning to restore it. The high-end gameplay is that you place it in position, and then verbally read the recovery method, such as the top layer 90 degrees clockwise, the right 2 layers 180 degrees, and the lower layer 90 degrees counterclockwise. This method cannot be verified in real time. It is a test of memory and calculation depth. Said Mo Feng raised his eyebrows, understood, you can try it in your hand first, you can recover from contact with it, even if it's pretty good. Lynch leaned back comfortably, I am starting to feel a little bit of pressure now. Oh, then you try. Mo Feng is even more looking forward to it. Don't underestimate it. It has 4,325, 2003, 27, 448, 98, 56, 000 changes. But Lynch didn't pick it up. Instead, he closed his eyes directly. Someone gave pillows as soon as they fell asleep. For a long time, the violin music has been changed to a more brisk Croatian rhapsody. Lynch also spoke at the right time. The symbols of the Rubik's Cube are defined as follows: R, L, U, D, F, B refer to the right, left, top, bottom, front, and back respectively. Floor. The layer number directly means 90 degrees clockwise, the suffix means 90 degrees counterclockwise, and the suffix 2 means rotation 180 degrees. For example, RL2 means that the right layer turns 90 degrees clockwise, and then the left layer turns 180 degrees. Mo Feng's face began to be serious. And Lynch continued to explain with closed eyes. The layer first method is divided into 7 steps: bottom edge return, bottom corner return, middle edge return, top edge surface position, top angle surface position, top corner return position, and top edge return position. Among them, the bottom edge cross can be understood without a teacher, and the bottom corner return is based on the background color orientation, using the formula RUR, FUF, U. The central edge is returned to its position, according to the following conditions. Use the formulas UFUFUR, URURUFUF. The top edge surface position, according to the following conditions, use the formula LULULU2L, RURURU2R, Y. As Lin Chi gradually read out the simplest entry-level layer first method, Mo Feng's mouth slowly opened up. He already understood that this was not a way to recover this Rubik's Cube at all. Is above the special solution the universal solution of the entire third-order Rubik's Cube. Universal solution. There are thousands of illusions in the world. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com, I broke it by myself. He couldn't help his lips trembling slightly. Did you get the solution from above? No, you obviously have been in jail these days, and this thing has not spread outside at all. He couldn't help but clenched his fists, even if it spread? This is a general solution. It took a genius to sort out the results in a day, Thuxin, but this is only a few minutes? Lynch just smiled and continued. Angular first method. Prism first method. Mo Feng recovered somewhat at this time, but his heart was still jumping. These two solutions are similar to the layer first method, but it means that you have completely understood the whole solution. I heard that someone summed up a few empirical formulas during dinner, and that should be what you said. Mo Feng grinned and said, he has already got the answer he wanted, but the genius still has to fight, but he can't let his tail rise to the sky. Lynch nodded, but these methods are relatively mechanical and can't be used for quick screwing. More CFOP method is divided into cross F2LOLLPLL, a total of 119 formulas. After proficiency can be controlled within 30 seconds to solve the third-order Rubik's Cube. At this moment, Mage Mo Feng finally closed his eyes. He stood up directly, took out his mobile phone and dialed. Hey, mentor, I just heard a CFOP method for the Rubik's Cube in the final test of the apprenticeship of the first-year Mage. The challenge can be used as a deep standard answer. For the next half an hour, the Mage Mo Feng's phone called in and out at a high frequency, until the battery was a little hot. He put down the phone with a sigh of relief. Is it weird? Mo Feng smiled as if a rock fell in his heart. I thought the communication between your mages was done through spells. Lynch curiously asked. In the previous life, he manipulated the mage in the stand-alone game. After mastering the teleport spell, he didn't have a good walk. It's us, not you. Mo Feng corrected him. It stands to reason, but casting spells is not without cost. Mo Feng said and blinked his eyes. Under the state of the middle and low circles, the spiritual communication spells are always difficult to achieve. Either you have to cast spells on the target in advance, rather than the walkie-talkie. Or it is a one-time transmission, not as good as a text message. In that case, why not rely on the same powerful technology? This specially customized satellite phone in my hand, from reliability to privacy, it's all pretty good. A mage who masters flying skills will still fly planes honestly, unless he can use teleportation skills. Of course, more importantly, the mana is limited, and the high-altitude environment is really not friendly. Mo Feng showed a confident gaze, so our wizards tend to show the splendor of spells in corners where the light of science and technology cannot shine. From the very beginning, I have used the zero-ring communication technique, which is enough to ensure that our soft conversation is limited to you and I can only hear it. Lynch couldn't help but swallowed in his throat. Even at this moment, he felt that the other party was full of light, and the swaying songs around him seemed like a staggered train, drifting away. Magic still looks pretty handsome. Lynch couldn't help re-examining the memory palace deep in the sea of consciousness. Most of the original cracks have been repaired. Obviously, after receiving the impact of the spell instead of Lynch, it also recovered extremely quickly. Realizing that he may not have such a rare opportunity to enter the academy, Lynch asked, "Actually, I'm curious, why is the mage's memory and calculation abilities exquisite, instead of the traditional magic talent?" Hee. Mage Mo Feng smiled unbearably. The answer is very simple. First of all, perceive the occult particle test. You pass the assessment at the graduation stage of elementary school, and then you have the opportunity to enter the special middle school, so as to participate in the mysterious Magic Unified College entrance examination. So magic perception talent. You have defeated 70% of the people. As for the magic capacity, I can only say that with the calculation and memory levels of ordinary people, it is far from the level that requires the ability to compete with magic talent. These two aspects are not enough. You will be restrained even when you cast spells, just like a puppet. As Mo Feng snapped his fingers, a bright halo appeared in the fingertips. The inside was like a blazing firework, and the outer circle was covered with an elegant palace lantern lampshade, and the halo fluttered with the wind. Customers in Clear Bar can't help but cover their mouths and look at this gorgeous scene. This is the other side that magic is difficult to reach. I used the zero-ring dancing light technique with a snap of my fingers, but a crappy novice wizard may not be able to perform it for an hour or two. And every time the process of casting a spell, it is a process of completing a special solution by inputting many current state quantities through a complicated spell model. So the road is on the opposite side, and I walked there honestly. Otherwise, in order to save 2 steps, I would do a complicated problem, and only when my brain got into the water would it be so wasteful to cast spells. A husband and a master of the world, in a word, he is the law of the world. Lynch even felt the clear movement of his heart, and finally felt a sense of turning the clouds and seeing the sun before him. Casting a spell, in the simplest way, is to apply a formula to complete a solution process. Putting on the scumbag is unable to memorize formulas and formulas. Only by completing these 2 basic skills can you be qualified to pursue high-scoring talents. All circles themselves have a wall, and only those inside the wall know the mystery. Other than that, is magic omnipotent? Knowing that he is a numeracy rookie, Lynch still feels unbearable in his heart. Even the winged flight of 9 deaths, there are many extreme survivalists who are addicted to it, trying to conquer the sky through it, but for the mage, it is just a threering flying technique. Think too much. Mage Mo Feng said with a smile, there is a specialization in the art industry. The 8 major factions of magic change, spells, illusions, necromancers, protection, prophecy, shaping, and confusing control. In addition to the 8 independent universal factions, when you enter the academy, you will know the complexity of the entire system. Ordinary wizards have exhausted their entire lives, but they can only specialize in 1 or 2 factions. This is also the most obvious characteristic of each wizard. Only one. Lynch was suddenly disappointed. Although he knows that greed is too much to chew, but he only masters one, and he is too frustrated. Mo Feng shook his head. That's more than that. Powerful wizards will try to practice cross-faction spells after digging into the specialization faction to a certain depth, but the height is limited. Like me, I specialize in the foraying change system, but the spells, plastic energy can also make do with the first and second rings. Lynch could not help but speed up his heartbeat, and tentatively asked, why is there such a restriction? Mage Mo Feng couldn't help being a little surprised, but he patiently explained, I can't remember. As far as your basic score is only 250 points, you will definitely suffer a lot in the future. The Academy should focus on your characteristics and let you cultivate from the perspective of combat power output. Memory. Even if Lynch tells himself that his heart is still in the water, the decibels will inevitably increase, and he doesn't even care about the training direction mentioned. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Is it possible to achieve a genius that has never appeared before, such as hypermemia? Mage Mo Feng finally couldn't help but burst into laughter at this moment. The me in front of you is the kind of genius in your mouth. In the beginning, I was also confident with my unforgettable memory. I must excel and become one of the few generalists in history, said Mo Feng with a lonely tone. Based on the magical model of the mysterious language of Sismina, the existence of the sky has the characteristics of repelling memory. The language of Sismina itself has the characteristics of forgetting, as if God believes that it is stolen by humans who presumptuous gods, and has been trying to recover from memory. Even a genius who has never forgotten his eyes has to work thousands of times before he can forcibly memorize it, and even when he casts a spell, he has to work hard to get back to the first or two of the thought technique model. In many cases, the computing power is spent on forced corrections in the case of model errors. Mage Mo Feng suddenly looked bright. You just deduced the common solution to Rubik's Cube. Let our faction decide to invest real resources to train you, because your talent is the key guarantee for casting spells. Most mages will practice a few signature spells, trying to rely on their body to remember. And the cross-faction memory spell model, rejection will be more serious. If you want to die, dare to die to remember the 4 different faction models, you can be sure that you will be an apprentice for the rest of your life. If it weren't for Sismina to record words with special materials, the inheritance of magic would have long been cut off. Unless the memory in your mind is a book, no one will come. Lynch, who was in a listening state during the whole process, was stunned for an instant. He is really not a book. But a lot of books? Jinghu Community, 13 buildings with 1,804 units. The shiny wooden floor was originally carefully taken care of. It was greasy and the footprints were dusty. The potted plants blooming on the balcony in midsummer are dusty and lack watering. A family of 4 sits quietly in the living room, like statues. In half an hour, the list of mage apprentices enrolled in the Central Magic Academy will be announced simultaneously on multiple platforms. The scene that was announced live on the watch list in the early morning of June 7 has become a tradition for many families, and even used to motivate their own children. Many families are staring at the screen the whole time, looking forward to knowing what they are familiar with. Name. For the families of recent candidates, this is an extremely sacred moment not to be missed. Under the condition that the scores of basic knowledge have been announced, the difficulty of winning the top candidate from the top candidate group with 490+ scores has been reduced a lot. Many TV stations have successively come to the families of the most popular candidates. For them, only a passable average score of 160 is required for the intellectual test. Therefore, on the screen, countless well-off families with 3 bedrooms and 1 living room are overcrowded by relatives and friends and crowded with people. However, Unit 1804, a family that also has fresh candidates, is sad. The ashtray was filled with cigarette butts with only the left, and the father, who was the host, was still smoking, full of smoke. Mother stared at the screen with a pale face, her towel soaked. She was expecting and panicking, lest the hope of supporting her will be shattered. The two sisters are sitting in two short positions on the sofa, with their hands around their knees, equally heavy. After a long time, my sister stood up and said, "I went to bed, there is no hope for me to wait, he can't get 400 points. My younger sister was uncomfortable, "You are just jealous that your brother passed the test and entered the special middle school, but you didn't. My brother can definitely pass the exam. Digging people don't dig short, and hitting people don't hit the face." My sister suddenly turned dark, and her anger came from her heart. Am I jealous? Jealous that he made you and I drop out of school? Jealous that he let his father's company go bankrupt in 3 days? Jealous that he let his mother be expelled from the business unit? Lear, enough. Suddenly, the silent father stopped and said, "It's because my father is incapable and can't save him." As he said, his face became more decadent and grey, as if he was a few years old, and after he didn't dye his hair anymore, his pale hair was already hard to hide. In the past few days, he has made countless calls on his cell phone. Various relatives and partners in business occasions and even people with one-sided connections have asked him. Asked people everywhere, just for an opportunity to meet the parents of the deceased, that is, the mage and his wife, to apologize. It's just that the only thing in exchange is hang up, busy tone and blackout. As the older sister, Lin Li slightly clenched his fists and sat down again. He's fine, he will be gone tomorrow. But what about the whole family? In the past 2 days, the upper and lower floors and the neighbors have avoided us and moved like a plague god. And he still doesn't know how big he has become. Curse! Mother suddenly burst into tears. It's useless to be my mother, obviously Cheer just died suddenly when she met her. Don't say it. Father Lin suddenly warned, if you spread this to others, it will only make our whole family dead. My sister stood up and insisted, my brother will definitely pass the exam. Why? Sister Lin Li sneered, just because our whole family is now banned. Sister Lin Duo turned her head akimbo, only he is my brother. When she was only 15 years old, she looked at no one to respond, and she stuck her tongue out at her sister, when those investment funds were holding down my brother, the skincare products and cosmetics that I gave to my mother, don't you just use it? Sister Lin Li sneered, too lazy to argue with her sister, turned her head and stared at the TV screen. Looking at the festive atmosphere of the candidates' families nailed down on the screen, she felt even more hateful and kept switching channels. It's just at this early morning that almost all the TV footages are locked in the examinee's family, and countless relatives and friends gather together and look forward to it. No one asks the poor in the downtown area, and the rich has distant relatives in the mountains. Lin Li looked at the full smiles, expecting the candidates for the title of the gold list. The age of her brother is not too different, and suddenly her nose becomes sore. Since the sophomore year of high school, the family knew that Lynch should not be admitted and could not be a mage apprentice. Those funds that specifically suppressed the investment in the future masters also slowly faded after the evaluation results came out, and the gifts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars were not taken back. Everyone thought that Lynch could rely on the scoreline no matter how bad he was, and work in a related industry serving the mages like his mother. That would also be an excellent way out. Whoever thought that disaster will come sooner than tomorrow? The 12 o'clock countdown was getting closer, and Lin Li began to sweat on the palms of her hands. She told herself that she should hate Lynch, who is not sensible and nosy. But as she thought about it, her eyes gradually blurred, and the time she never stopped walking seemed to push the years back to the node between her and Lynch's learning. Hold hands to go to school, blow bubbles in the bath, grow up to sleep in separate beds, the loss of different schools, the disgust that I can't match with my constant efforts. At this moment, Lin Li hated herself again. Why did she fail the talent test in the year she graduated from primary 6? If she is now a mage apprentice, will Lynch be saved? Boom! Suddenly, all the TV programs switched to the countdown simultaneously. 10, 9, 8. Lin Li closed his eyes directly. With the cheerful and envious compliments of the host on the TV, the screen keeps playing the candidates who have passed the admission, and her heart sinks slowly, like falling to the bottom of the valley. Ah! I'm hit! I'm hit! Sister Lin Duo's childish voice cut through the tranquility. Sister Lin Li opened her eyes on the spot, and could no longer hold the heart of her parents whose faces were flushed, and instantly locked onto the unforgettable words in the constantly refreshing list. The next moment, 4 mobile phones in the house rang, and the landline also vibrated. Even the whole building made incredible noises at this moment. Countless people who knew about this incident all picked up their phones and dialed, either celebrating or making up for it. When many senior municipalities saw this, they faintly felt that the sky had changed, knowing that something was going to happen. These old fried dough sticks, who have been immersed in politics for many years, can often see the clues of the rise of a certain faction and the downfall of a certain faction from 1 or 2 inconspicuous recognition and activation personnel news. The cheering people in the room did not notice their every move, and they were already known by the 2 standing in the cold wind across the building. Are you sure you won't go in? Mage Mo Feng folded his hands on his chest. I can wait for your family to finish the relationship, and then let our reception staff stationed in. After you enter the academy, you can come back again in the year of the monkey. As he talked, he blindly twisted his hands on the Rubik's Cube. The more he verified Lynch's solution, the more he was frightened. No more. Lynch looked up at the starry sky above his head and shook his head. He remembers that there are thousands of books in the palace, but none of them belong to the warm family in front of him. Everything can only rely on the original memory fragments of the body, but he also made up his mind that his younger sister Lin Duo will definitely reward him, and Lin Li must be hit hard. As for not going in, the main reason is that he hasn't figured out how to perfectly play the role of the trinity of son, younger brother, and elder brother. If you show your stuff in front of Mo Feng, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com might turn red into nothing. Then let me tell you, by the way, mixed news. Mo Feng nodded. 5 minutes ago, Luo Tianqing and his wife had submitted an application for resignation and asked to be transferred back to the capital where the Central Academy of Magic is located. You know what this means. From then on, your family should be safe, but for you, Lynch turned around and smiled. No, this is good news. He can even feel the heartfelt joy of this body's residual will. Lynch continued to look up at the starry sky as he said. Can you do me a favor? Today's moonlight is really beautiful. It was agreed in advance that the one who can pick the moon is called Fae, not a mage. What do you think? Lynch was a little dazed, staring at each other as if looking at an idiot. Book me a flight ticket to the capital, tonight. Until just now, the crack in the palace of mind has been repaired. He also inferred from the side attack that this palace should have been a frontal blow to the middle-aged mage Luo Tianqing's foraying spell Phantom Killer. The nosebleed at that time was just a sequelae. The other party knew that he had missed, and Lynch knew that the other party knew, and the other party knew that Lynch knew. The 2 closed loops like Dai Meng Zhuangzhou, leaving Mo Feng standing on the side in a daze. And his top priority is threefold: to enter the college smoothly, to dig out the truth about the death, and avoid the opponent's blow. But after all, it can turn into one thing: find a thigh thick enough to hug. Private tutor is a special treatment for every S-level mage apprentice. I just don't know if there is a pretty, cute, and powerful mentor at the Central Academy of Magic. When night fell that day, Lynch followed the Mofeng mage and left Yangcheng overnight, but his terminal station was not the capital city, but a second-line border town. Lynch followed the other party all the way, actually accepting Mofeng's personal protection to avoid undetectable case killings. It is too easy for the master to create an accident. A confusion spell manipulates the pilot to make the entire plane's passengers disappear without a trace on the ocean. Although Lynch was disappointed that his first graduation trip was spent with a 30-year-old uncle with stubble, he still accepted this fact. During the past few days, he has also slowly come into contact with the power of the hidden faction behind the Mage Mo Feng. Mo Feng has been in close contact with the outstanding ones in the newly released list of Mage apprentices these days. Even if you want to come, the entire Blue Star can range from major powers in the country, to the neo-organization of the Foundation, and to the ordinary people. Everyone knows the importance of having a mage in advance. The icing on the cake can catch up with charcoal in the snow, and the closed management of the master apprentice is difficult to achieve. This has led to the routine of investing in betting on students in special middle schools. The hidden factions in the Mage Association that need to absorb fresh blood are also not behind in this respect. However, those who have to do their homework in advance are mostly lack of confidence. The Foundation bets at the high school stage. The small factions are contacted a week before enrollment. The big factions choose to find them at the apprenticeship stage. The top factions, even only the best of the wizards, can get a glimpse of the truth. At first hearing, Lin Chi knew it was impolite, but still looked at Mo Feng with weird eyes. Doesn't this mean that the school behind him is weak? It turned out that after lessons did he realize that his apprentice with this level treatment had the value of being contacted by the big factions in advance. They are mid-range combat forces that can be quickly cultivated. Every 10 years, the hidden faction under the association will launch a newcomer to carry out a dragon battle. Rumor has it that the participants suffered heavy casualties, but the final winner was able to get the legendary wish ring. The faction behind can also get the resource tilt of the Wizards Association in the next 10 years, which will form a snowball effect, even linked to the survival of many small factions. Lynch had a headache listening. Mage's Holy Grail War? Blue Star version of the Tri-Wizard Tournament? When I listened, there was no good intention. Most of the participants were short-lived ghosts. Thinking of this, Lynch couldn't help sighing slightly. As expected, no matter where you are, you can't escape the law of equivalent exchange. The Mage Association needs to maintain its ruling power, constantly attract the best to become apprentices, and train them to become masters. The secret faction needs to continue to survive and also absorb their outstanding apprentices into it. Lynch also took advantage of what might be the most leisure time in the next few years, and reorganized the thoughts in his head, thinking about his current situation, strengths and weaknesses, and secretly deduced them. Memory spell model is essentially a long-lasting craft in which iron rods are ground into needles. In the apprenticeship stage, it is generally good to memorize 30%, but generally only 60% of the completion is possible to have stable casting, and the casting process will not be out of shape. MageGate can only slowly advance the completeness rate towards 70%, 80%, 90%, or even 100% by repetitive memory and integrating the model into the body after the accumulated time is spent. Mage is a profession that gets more and more popular as it gets older. A 1,000-year-old mage is stronger than a 100-year-old mage's memory, and has a higher success rate in casting spells. Therefore, among a group of newcomers who have only been in training for a few years, in the process of pecking each other, his computational genius forced by the pressure of death can act as a surprise soldier. Lynch came back to his senses, and understood that no matter how much the opponent said, he would ultimately be just a faster-growing early tool man in the battle for the dragon, and a more powerful in the eyes of the hidden faction. Is a bit more awkward. He swung Fang Chu's mouth on the keyboard to be a strong king. In real work, he also had to bow his head obediently when meeting a leader. No desire is strong. But Lynch was not too depressed, like Mo Feng in front of him. In order to become a stronger wizard, he was willing to be driven by him. In the process of lying down and accepting it, if the faction goal is the same as yourself, it will definitely be much more comfortable. Therefore, whether the ideals are consistent or not has become a key factor for many strong people to choose hidden faction. Faction sheltered him, he joined the faction. This is the most basic reason Mo Feng has expounded with him in the past few days. Thinking like this, Lynch took a sip of the poplar nectar frappuccino in the glass, and his teeth were sour in an instant. Then he looked at the paper straw soaked with saliva. There is no soul at all, Lynch put it aside on the spot. For safety's sake, the hotel they settled in, including the supergiant shopping plaza below, belonged to the school's secret industry. As long as Lynch doesn't run out of the outer circle or yell his name loudly, his life will remain temporarily in the pocket mezzanine. At this time, he saw a group of junior high school students sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed silently by the long table, and he couldn't help but smile knowingly. Their expressions are filled with fascinating smiles, as if they are in the heaven, feeling the gift and hymn of life. Actually, this group of junior high school students are the Starbucks atmosphere group of the Blue Star era. Once upon a time, Lynch was also one of them, breathing the occult particles in the air. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com uses a series of complex effects such as breathing to contain them in the body. Because of the mysterious energy particles, it is the beginning of Blue Star's magical power. All students under the standard education system perform the magic talent test when they graduate from elementary school to determine whether they can perceive the mysterious particles that are stably suspended in the air and are difficult to observe. Lynch was able to perceive the mysterious particles that year, and he stood out from the crowd and ranked among the magical talent sequence of less than 20%, thus entering the special system middle school, and was qualified to participate in the mysterious Magic Unified College entrance examination 6 years later. As a reward for passing, their group of students all practiced the secret energy breathing method, which is used to absorb the secret energy particles in the air and house them in the body. The magic is to use the mystical energy particles in the body as the driving medium, pulling the mystical energy particles in the air, and converting them into equivalent energy through the mass energy equation. 1 gram of occult particles is completely converted into energy, which is 25 million kilowatt-hours of electricity, and at 6 cents per kilowatt, it is 16 million yuan. At this time, these junior high school students are trying to breathe the occult particles in the air into their bodies, and they also show that they are the apprentices of the future mage. But Lynch has always been puzzled, including everyone who doesn't know. After all these occult particles entered the body, where did they go? Where is it stored? How much is stored now? Seems to be the ultimate 3 questions in life, which has been plagued by countless middle school students. Even Mo Feng smiled and said to him that after he entered the academy, he knew how many occult particles had accumulated in his body. At this time, Lynch suddenly found that Mo Feng was walking towards him with a punk girl. In the midsummer season, the girl wears the Little Prince's pure white mask, and wears 2 checkered fakes with a vigorous hood and a playful lantern sleeve, with exposed deep eyeshadow makeup, which can be salt or sweet and full of texture. The lower body is a stitched black suspender skirt with a metal Japanese buckle. In addition to the black mesh socks on the thighs, there is another layer of black knee-length stockings underneath. After matching with thick-soled boots, it is a dazzling and eye-catching punk girl. Looking at the girl who walked along, Lynch was not afraid of getting hot rashes in his heart. On the one hand, he silently gave up the space and shrank inward. After the two opened the door, he noticed that the girl was playing with the third-order Rubik's Cube, and the colors on all sides gradually converged, and it was only half a step away from the final color uniformity. Generally speaking, after ordinary people have disrupted the Rubik's Cube, there is no formula assistance. Unless they buy a new one, the Rubik's Cube will not have a day to return to its original state. Hey! Lynch raised his eyebrows and looked at Mo Feng slightly. In the past few days, the other party has traveled around in 7 or 8 cities, but it was the first time that he brought an apprentice of a similar age to him, which ignited the curiosity in Lynch's heart. Reminiscent of the complicated nepotism of the mage class, he even suspected that the other party was Mo Feng's relative. You just breathed occult particles as hard as they did. Mo Feng looked at the junior high school students who occupy the long table, and asked curiously, did you teach them the experience of seniors? What are you talking about? What you have in front of you is the glorious apprentice of the wizard who has just passed the mysterious Magic Unified College entrance examination this year. Lynch vomited. He hadn't figured out the occult particles himself, and his eyes locked on the girl. I forgot to introduce you. Mo Feng smiled. This is the same rank candidate, Wang Ruling. All right. At this time, the girl happened to restore the Rubik's Cube in her hand and handed it back to Mo Feng. This is not difficult at all, you can change to a more difficult test. The girl Wang Ruling also looked at Lynch with a hint of provocation. It's just that Lynch's face was indifferent, like an old monk. After the two stared at each other for more than half a minute, when they reached the critical line of love sparks, she hesitated. Don't you know me? Why should I know you? Lynch wondered. Know the name Wang Ruling, can you exchange money? The memory fragments of the owner of the original body also recovered 50% to 60%, failing to be specific in all aspects. I'm going. Mo Feng said in surprise, I thought I could shock you. Ruo Ling is a well-known girl idol and has fascinated many 18-year-old boys like you. Lynch then understood why the other party was wearing a mask, and faintly replied, I'm not young. But while being an idol, I can also enroll in a mage apprentice, which is quite rare. Listening to the other's rare and consonant tone of the old bustard, the girl Wang Ruling suddenly bit her lower lip and said angrily, thank you for your compliment. Introduce, Wang Ruling is a memory genius like me. There are a few people who have full marks in basic knowledge, and their intelligence test is as high as 350 points. This is Lynch, with 250 points of knowledge and 400 points of intelligence. Just like you, he is also an apprentice of Srank Sequence Mage. Seeing that the atmosphere was wrong, Mage Mo Feng hurriedly introduced the two to each other. I want you to meet each other this time, mainly because I hope you can take care of each other in the future. The girl Wang Ruling glanced at Lynch. If she is willing to sacrifice and become my little sister, I don't mind. Lynch grinned, if you can talk, just talk more. I don't mean that idols are a career selling dreams. You are selling negative energy, right? I can only say that some people are born out of aura. The girl turned her head in disdain, since I am admitted, why do I still wear a mask to others? And no one tells you the rules? When I meet an apprentice with a higher score, do I have to show respect? Obviously, the girl's intelligence test is only 50 points inferior, while the memory test is doubled, and the psychological level has already established an advantage. Lynch naturally didn't bother to argue with the little girl. It's not a reason to be slanderous and not to be false. Moreover, you can't kiss someone if you win a fight. He looked at Mo Feng with a surprised look, and Zhang Xuyan could take care of him, so he wouldn't make a special trip. Mo Feng was optimistic, if Ling, when you report, you will be grateful for this meeting today. With him? Can you help me? Wang Ruling raised her eyebrows slightly, showing her unbelief. Help? Lynch was also surprised. He looked at the girl's almost flat figure, thinking that he would not be rich in craftsmanship. Mo Feng suddenly smiled mysteriously, the answer is in this Rubik's Cube. On the night of the college registration, the first time before entering the dormitory, the old students have to pass the test, usually to solve a certain problem. This is also the tradition of the college. Generally speaking, if it is not too much, the college will turn a blind eye. Only eyes. Including molesting female students. Lynch interjected. How could Mo Feng's words sound unreliable, and Wang Ruling immediately looked at him in shame. Mo Feng also gave a smirk. Men and women live together, you don't have this chance. According to my help last night, after making Rubik's Cube a final exam question for the last apprentice. By then, they will use Rubik's Cube to embarrass you. So I hope you can take advantage of this opportunity. Lynch understood instantly. Like a class monitor at a university, it is likely that the counselor just clicked one of the pleasing goals in the list at the beginning of school. Or just the first self-recommended person. As long as he can be a person, he will work for 10 years after many years, and even use this as a pedal to enter the student union and then to the league organization. This is the importance of first opportunity. But hasn't she been screwed out? Lynch was surprised. The old sow had gone up the tree. Why did he want him to do it? Mo Feng shook his head. Not enough. I need you to solve your own, and help others to also quickly unscrew it, because the Rubik's Cube is the key to entering the dormitory. Mage apprentices with high intelligence test scores can be solved in half an hour. But there are always some who are not lucky and stupid. And what can be more exciting than solving the Rubik's Cube on the spot to help them? Once you establish this kind of prestige in the male and female dormitory, you will take the lead in the next selection. Lynch was finally moved to cry. This is back to the big tree to enjoy the cool, reading www.yuyugonshu.com doesn't even reveal the topic. What are you talking about? The girl Wang Ruling was half surprised, half unbelievable. Mo Feng looked at Lynch at this time. Lynch nodded. Since I told you, I don't mind if you use it. He added in his heart that it would definitely be better if you could give a fee. Mo Feng smiled slightly, and directly took out a stack of A4 paper-bound materials from his pocket and placed it in front of the girl. The cover of the cover is a few big characters: Rubik's Cube Quick Twisting Method, Pioneer, Lynch. Looking at the author's name, Lynch blushed even if his face was thick enough. Wang Ruling, the girl, seemed to be flipping through her mother's diary class many years ago. After looking at the name of the founder with all sorts of inconceivability, her fingertips slightly trembled and slowly opened the handbook in front of her. Immediately after her face, she kept switching in shame and shock, like the blue sea and blue sky. In less than a few minutes, she was extremely clever and verified the rigor of the solution teaching manual with the real map of the Rubik's Cube. Wang Ruling stood up immediately, ignoring the strange gazes of everyone in the cafe, and bowed to Lin Qi a full 90 degrees. I took the liberty just now, I'm sorry. Lynch nodded, bends and stretches, he deserves to be an idol. However, he did not speak to make up, but comforted, let's work hard for the school together. It's just that the shape of his mouth facing Mo Feng is the other two words compensation, which completely forgets the idea of giving him a free gift. Thinking about the next harvest of Lynch, his face suddenly became awkward. It seems that he won't actually recover the Rubik's Cube? Strictly speaking, knowing does not mean doing is not the same thing, so there is time to talk about the difference between a doer and a doer. After reading Tongji's Advanced Mathematics and Linear Algebra, combined with Zhejiang University's Probability Theory, the knowledge level has met the mathematics level of the postgraduate entrance examination. Just like the layer first method and CFOP method in Lynch's mind, they are both strong and straightforward methods to restore the Rubik's Cube. But I don't try to brush the XXX Mathematics Review Book, XXX1800 questions, XXX18 lectures and other supplementary materials videos. When I arrived at the examination room, I was blinded. Of course, except for genius. But, Lynch is also a genius. Looking at the exquisite third-order Rubik's Cube in Wang Ruling's hand, he suddenly appeared on his face. Give him a little half an hour, relying on the most basic entry-level method, it will definitely be able to restore it to the original factory settings. But if it is more complicated to use, the CFOP method commonly used in Rubik's Cube racing competitions, it will take him more than 10 minutes to look through the formula, and he can't show the operation at all. I personally don't like to be eye-catching, let's forget it. Lynch replied awkwardly, almost writing allergic to pretense. Without waiting for Mo Feng to speak, Wang Ruling, whose face was hidden under the white mask, suddenly asserted. Student Lynch, this is the brainchild of your hard work and many days of pushing the show. How can I be the only one to show the limelight? A gentleman has something to choose from or not, Mr. Mo Feng, if Lynch doesn't participate, I won't be out there. At this time, Wang Ruoling's pretty face was raised high, and the dull hair of her bangs was waving in the wind, like a proud little swan. Lynch was blocked and speechless. "You are welcome, classmate Wang." This is what I blurted out in a few minutes without thinking about it at all. Even the text version and the accompanying pictures are estimated to have been sorted out by Master Mo Feng, and he really just talked about it during the whole process. Well, maybe I need to add more time to look through the sea of consciousness, and my eyes will be a little awkward. It's just that Lynch can't tell the truth. He finally knew that the consequences of pretending to be overpretended and suffering a backlash, simply issuing a level first method was enough to prove his own strength, and there would be no such incident. After graduating from the academy, Master Mo Feng has traveled to the outside world for more than 10 years, wherever he can look, he is a respectful person. It was the first time that he saw two such angular partners, which made his mind a little bit overwhelmed. It's like this before enrolling. You can't climb on top of him as an apprentice. Mage Mo Feng turned his head directly, smiling at his goal of taking care of him for a few days. "Lynch, you have to know that this society is a densely woven web, otherwise we mage won't have to go out and participate in the clutter work of the ruling class in the world, and suddenly add obstacles to the path of spiritual practice. And you will never be able to guess which powerful mage is standing behind those mage apprentices. But as long as you show it, your reputation will spread through their words. Your parents will send you to the academy. They have fulfilled their lifelong wish, and the rest is up to you. This is not just showing the limelight, but showing your talents like the outside world. The school has paved the way for you. This is only the first step, but it is the key to the fabled chief student position. The chief student of each college is the position that the Supreme Council will pay attention to. Everyone who has succeeded has become a powerful wizard, even I am jealous of the person on the stage." He turned his eyes to the junior high school students who were still trying to absorb the mysterious energy particles in the air with the breathing and breathing method. In their lives, the apprenticeship of the mage is the end. Even if they can't become a mage, they can guarantee the peace of life. But in your life, the apprenticeship of the mage is only the starting point. Lynch nodded startledly. As a high-ranking mage, Mo Feng was able to tell them this, and it was also heartwarming. This is really not a small mess in the school. Countless people in the office are fighting for their heads, not just to get a chance to show their faces in front of the big leaders. But, the premise is that he, a cloud player, really knows how. Watching the live broadcast, stubborn Bronze can comment on the mistakes of the main players of the first and second professional teams. And the two people in front of them couldn't even think of it. Not to mention the flexible use of formulas to recover the Rubik's Cube blindly, he stumbled upon seeing the instructions step by step. Until now, I had to wait until I would quietly buy back the magic, and then worked overtime at night to practice. Master Mo Feng, seeing that Lin Chi had accepted, nodded in satisfaction, and looked back at the unruly girl who he met. "If you have a weak computing base, practice more these days and see if you can do 2 blindfolds with both hands at the same time." Lynch felt even more stressful when he heard it. Shouldn't he have to verbally instruct others at the same time? Playing blind chess is not so embarrassing. But I can practice openly, and finally take a breath. However, Mo Feng turned back to look at Lynch and said, "With your strength, taking a good rest these days is to avoid too much trouble. Especially I heard some strange wind outside, so before we arrive at the check-in, we live in a room, and I will protect you from close range." Lynch maintained a stiff smile. "Master Mo Feng, thank you so much. The night is quiet and the lights are bright." After washing, Lynch made a cup of black tea and sat quietly in the corner alone, watching the Does God Throw a Dice? In the Sea of Consciousness. This book uses the text of popular fiction to describe the whole process and controversy of the birth of special general relativity and quantum mechanics in the early days of modern physics in the early 20th century. Looking at the impassioned history of science, Lynch's heart was also shaken. Master Mo Feng still has some basic attention to clothing, food, housing and transportation. Tonight, I chose the presidential suite. There is even a miniature swimming pool next to the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room. But Lynch didn't have the thoughts of enjoyment. Instead, he looked at the dazzling memory books in the countless bookshelves in the depths of the sea of consciousness, thinking about the direction of the next break. Now he is a beginner who holds a master's game record but does not have a board to replay. Various kinds of horses go into 7, artillery 2 draws 5, the first 7 or 8 moves can make do, but it is impossible to do it later. He just wandered in the ocean of bookshelves. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com just stopped suddenly and landed on a copy of Lin Chi Woodworking Memory. At that time, he bought a thin pine plank directly in order to set up the figurines, and built an IKEA house-shaped bookshelf with his bare hands, relying on a chainsaw and a hammer. Isn't he just lacking a rubbing cube to practice it? Can he build one by himself? And in front of you? Are these bookshelves just materials? Thinking of Lynch, he kicked down the bookshelf in front of him, and instantly the whole shelf fell apart on the spot like a prop, and the books above turned into stars and fell to the ground. Lynch picked up a crossbar in the shelf. The material was mysterious and difficult to distinguish. He tried to hold it slightly and found that the gripped part softened, and when he loosened it again, it returned to stiffness, just like clay. At the next moment, the shelves and memory books scattered on the ground are reverting back to the beginning as time goes back. The only difference is that the crossbar he picked up in his hand still exists. Is picked up by him, it belongs to him. With unbelievable excitement, Lynch took the memory book that was used to disassemble the Rubik's Cube in order to be handsome. Using the crossbar as the material, Lynch continued to shape it. 1 central axis, 6 central blocks, 12 edge blocks, 8 corner blocks, 26 parts each appeared in the hand, and then assembled by him, forming the prototype of the Rubik's Cube. Even Lynch successfully copied the colors on the 6 faces of the Rubik's Cube with a little bit in the memory book. However, at this time, Lynch no longer had the urge to make a Rubik's Cube in his heart. In his mind, what was conceived was something else entirely: Minecraft.